primeira mesa. Enfim, minha mesa é Intermedialidade, teatro e humor. A gente está aqui com a Danielle, quem vai começar é a Danielle Crepaldi Carvalho, da USP. Ela vai fazer a fala que se chama Estética of the cômico-musicado in the Brazillian cinematographic reviews, Peace and Love and Chantecler. É isso que a fala é sua.
Eu quero começar em português agradecendo a aceitação do meu trabalho para participar desse evento. Estou muito feliz de estar aqui. E vou tentar aqui. Experimentations related to the use of sounds in the cinema began decades before the historic section of the jazz singer in the United States in 1927. The excellent The Sound of Early Cinema, organized by Abel and Altman in 2001, for example, accounts for the variety of uses of sounds in the movie plays from its beginning. The accompaniment being performed by pianists, orchestras, mechanical devices that reproduce the recorded tunes, special effects, commentators, singers, or actors that sang song or deliver dialogues either behind the screen or next to it. If cinema was rarely silent, it wasn't so because it soon established a close relationship with the culture of its time, with the theatrical productions, the amusement parks, the music industries, the fairs. This relationship is also determined by the specificity of where the show was performed. Before the soundtrack was recorded in the film and the rooms were set to display the talkies, what roughly happened only in the 1930s, the cinema space experienced freedom. The sounds were accommodated to the ways of lives of the social groups before whom the moving images paraded. This presentation has as its object the singing films that came as a result of researches that took place from the beginning of the 20th century, which aimed at the synchronism between image and sound. This research analyzed this subject from a Brazilian point of view. I'm talking about my research specifically, considering the first decade of the 20th century, and focuses, for symbolic reasons, the city of Rio de Janeiro, that was the capital of the country then, as well as the space par excellence for the construction of a French ideal of civility. And in this context, this work intends to present a transdisciplinary research that aims to relate the cinema of the period with all the artistic manifestations that were produced within that is essentially musical society. Especially the theater performances, considering the stage was then an excellent synthesizer of the social polyphony, reflecting, although filtered by the mirror of the art, the social types, the gestures, voices, and sounds originated from various spaces and groups. The cinema and the theater established a two-way relationship. If, of course, the mise-en-scène of the theater served as a model for the first filmmakers, it didn't take long until the people involved with the theatrical craft began to experience in the cinematographic field. This presence came to a paroxysm in Brazil in the beginning of 1909, when the opera house of the city, that was called the Teatro Lírico, presented the Filme da Season, that was basically the conjugation of the art films made by Pathé, that intended to sum up grave subjects and highbrow music, and some Brazilian singing pictures, singing films, that were some popular operatic areas and operettas posed, as they used to say, by notorious artists of our own musical theaters that were placed, these guys were placed behind the screen in order to sing along the music that was silently sung by their moving shadows. This Brazilian strategy adapted to the local temper the purely mechanical process of the synchronization between between the cinematograph and the phonograph that would reach its peak in the end of 1906 with the French, when the French Gaumont started to commercialize its chronophone. The unusual success achieved by this Brazilian group of singers is explained from a feature that pervaded the Brazilian scene in greater or lesser extent throughout the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century: the accommodation of the foreign artistic production to the national context, often through the means of parody. Something that happened either on the stage and on the streets, as we can see by the carnival float, that is this one, of the Grupo dos Farofas, or group of the farofas, farofa meaning typical Brazilian food, put on the streets during the carnival in 1910, in which two couple of dancers waltz on the stage, on this stage that represents a deck of cards. That is a reference both to the operetta The Merry Widow, that was a huge success in Rio de Janeiro that year, and to the popular Jogo do Bicho, or animal game, against which the municipality was fighting for years. Carnivals held then in Rio's streets what a theatrical genre called the Revista de Ano, or the Year Review, performed in microcosm on stage. The transformation of facts and social types in allegories in order to critically and humorously investigate the city's ins and outs. The relevance of both objects for that society explains the appropriation of the genre Year Review by the cinematograph. Now about the Carioca's film reviews. As a sort of a fictional and dramatized newsreel, the cinematographic reviews adapted to the screen a theatrical genre of unusual success, of a huge success in Rio in the last 2 decades of the 19th century, which vanished together with its main creator, the playwright Arthur Azevedo, that was dead in 1909. The theater review has as its key feature the optic dimension, so that the director's effort in order to accomplish the various sceneries changes before the eyes of the public, without interrupting the action. The death of Arthur Azevedo coincided with the modernization of the city center of Rio de Janeiro, whose Haussmannian Central Avenue would receive in 1907 the first film palaces. The campaign started by the Rio's press, which considered the cinematograph the epitome of progress, as well as the dynamism of the film editing, and finally the enchantment, the popular social types of the reviews generated in the public, determined the genre's migration from the stage to the screen in 1910. The cinematographic review closely followed the genre from which it was originated. As the theatrical review, it had a spectacular nature, combining sumptuous staging. The operettas or the operas could be used as examples of that, combining the sumptuous staging to the social criticism. The stage became the place where the main events of the former year paraded in tableaus, dissociated one from another, which were connected with one another before the public's eyes by the character of the compère, who wandered through this period of time that opened up on the stage allegorically, making comments or criticisms upon it. In the theatrical or the cinematographic reviews, the streets and the newspapers through which the streets became news turned into the main characters of the scene. An intense exchange between the literary and the journalistic scopes took place there. Our first subject is also the first of the cinematographic year reviews, which is called Peace and Love, Paz e Amor, from 1910. Peace and Love has the fellow Tibúrcio of the Annunciation, Tibúrcio da Anunciação, as its protagonist. A fictional comic character to whom the Carioca magazine Careta had given reality forums 1 year before, building up his biography, He was supposed to be a farmer and a colonel of the National Guard who intended to get into the politics, according to Careta. As it unfortunately happens with the majority of that period's Brazilian film production, Peace and Love did not survive the time, nor its full score and libretto. The verses and the score of the Canção Sertaneja de Tibúrcio da Anunciação, or the country song by Tibúrcio of the Annunciation, survived, however, thanks to its printing by one of the city's music presses. There it is. My analysis will be based on them and in the production's photos and newspaper reports published by the press then. The song introduces Tibúrcio to the public. This is an English translation of it, a very poor one, I'm sorry for that. So the song introduces Tibúrcio to the public. The 7-syllable verses support a country melody. It is a free translation that is supposed to maintain the rhymes. He says to the public, "Who I am and where I come from, I will directly say, as well as the assets I have and what I came here to portray. I am the backcountry old man from the national reviews, and I wish nothing more than this capital to view. Simply that." Tibúrcio's prosody, that is unfortunately completely lost in this English translation, portrays the bumpkin, a Brazilian social type popularized from the early decades of the 19th century in works such as the theatrical comedies by Martins Pena, or later by the reviews by Arthur Azevedo. In Triboff, for example, it's a review written by Arthur Azevedo in 1891, the countryman Eusébio narrates in verses of similar structure what he was to do in the big city. Oh, it's not here, no problem. He says, "Master, I am a farmer from São João do Sabará." São João do Sabará is a town in Minas. "And I came to Rio de Janeiro to deal with a serious matter." There it is. The literary type and the erratic prosody are quite similar in both cases. The content of the speech, however, varies. Tibúrcio, unlike Eusébio, does not establish as his hometown the land where he came from, but the literary genre from where he arose. It doesn't matter to him his geographic location, but what matters is his relationship, is his membership with the literary corpus. Such metalinguistic dimension is a fundamental characteristic of the European musical comedy genres, such as the operetta or the opera buffa, which, once transferred to Brazil, were shaped into the local themes and social types. The structural matrix of Peace and Love would be exampled by Jacques Offenbach's Orpheus Enfer, it's an opera buffa from 1858, which was continuously staged in our country in French or in a translation and adaptation to the Brazilian Portuguese, in whose prologue the character known as the public opinion introduces herself, like the old Tibúrcio, as a fictional character. She says, "Qui je suis, du théâtre antique, já perfectionné le cœur. Je suis l'opinion publique, un personnage symbolique, ce qu'on appelle un raisonnaire." The plot of Peace and Love, as it usually happens in the theatrical reviews, mixes reality to a fantasy that is fulfilled with a critical dimension. Tibúrcio visits the moon world in search of company to go down to Rio de Janeiro. After rejecting to be accompanied by the allegorical character of the press, the countryman receives from the king Olan a more, let's say, ethereal compare. That is Master Bullshit, or Senhor Baboseira. Olan is an anagram of Nilo, the first name of Nilo Peçanha, the vice president who rose to power after the death of the elected president. It was, in what concerns Master Bullshit, he emerges from, and I'm quoting now from some things that I could gather regarding this review, he emerges from a magic and a hierophant cloud singing to the music by Mr. Melo Moraes Filho, The Shadow of a Huge Leaf Mango Tree, the history of his virtues and guessing skills. Master Bullshit is a kind of tragic deus ex machina, transplanted with verve from the classical Greece to the modern Brazil. The tune sung by the type emphasized its parodistic ethos. It was originally sung along the poem called O Bem Te Vi, or The Great Kiskadi. Some romantic verses that describe the meeting of the pure girl from the country with her beloved one in the shadow of the huge leaf mango tree mentioned by the newspaper. Such a bucolic atmosphere opposes to the tale told by this cinematographic review that is set not in the countryside but on the streets of the capital of Rio de Janeiro. Such a review that aims to portray a city that dreams of civilization. The musical arrangements of Peace and Love was done by Costa Jr., the author of songs that already belonged to the imaginary of the public. We lack information regarding this soundtrack. However, the historiography of the Brazilian cinema refers especially to the use of two songs, in addition to the parody of the song written by Melo Moraes Filho. One of them is the very well-known Abre Alas, a popular carnival march by Chiquinha Gonzaga, and the other is a musical recipe of the vatapá, that is a very typical dish from Bahia. Possibly an adaptation of the homónimos tango, written years before for another theatrical review. In Peace and Love, that song gains a new connotation, as it is sung by the allegorical character of the vatapá. Vatapá enters himself and sings the song, as a tribute to Rui Barbosa, a jurist from Bahia that had just applied for the presidential post and lost it. The character of Rui Barbosa is presented in a production photo of the film, that's this one, next to the character of Hermes da Fonseca. This little guy is Rui Barbosa, the other one is Hermes da Fonseca, a conservative military who disputed with him the presidents of the country and won it. The guy in the middle is the compare. Once in the capital, Master Bullshit and Tiburcio meet some allegorical characters that depict relevant facts of the year, such as the fashion, the politics, and the merry widow. Everybody comes to the stage, and also the animal game player. The aesthetic enjoyment was allied to the political criticism. The Peace and Love that gives its title to the review refers to the political slogan by Nilo Peçanha, the fellow who won the election. Slogan which he contradicted the minute he rose to power. It wasn't at all a government of peace and love he was projecting. The ending of Peace and Love also reproduced the structure of the theatrical genre from where it came from. Instead of the common ending of the pièce bien faite, which built up causal relationships between the parts of the story, Peace and Love ends up by an apotheosis of the arrival in Rio of the ship Minas Gerais. As you can see, the optical dimension, as well as the relationship the year review had with the newspaper reports, came in the first place. I'll post two of the songs because I don't think I'll have much time to go further. So the two of them are, first of all, it is the music . The song from the great Kiskadi, which presents the character that comes to Brazil with the compare. Here it's sung by Vicente Celestino in 1928. So it's a parody. The song is a really romantic one, and the lyrics would say strictly another thing, a comical thing, a comic thing. we get the picture from until this part. Because I want to put something that's really special to me, because that's this music sheet that I presented to you. It was sung by a fellow friend of mine yesterday, so I can present it to you as it was presented then, or he assumes it was presented then as this. This is something that was published to be sung, to be played in pianos, in houses, so it's not strictly what was presented during the year review. So the song, the country song, the guy is called Ricardo Severo, and I'm very grateful to him because it works.
Quem eu sou e de onde venho, bom direitinho dizer. Mas os saberes que tenho e que vim aqui fazer. Sou velho sertanejo das revistas nacionais. E há muito que desejo estas terras visitar.
Okay, I don't want to surpass the time, so I'll skip Chantecler. We can talk about it to whom be interested outside afterwards. And I'll read the conclusion, the closing part of it. Okay, I want to highlight one final aspect of the relationship between the theatrical reviews and the cinematographic reviews, as well as the relationship between both of them and the cinematographic program. Both spectacles, they preferred the fragmentation and the interchangeability of the tableaus instead of a narrative structured by well-explained causal links, such as the cinema of attractions. So it was so well accepted into the movie places. These reviews were so well accepted. Both objects were considered then a part of what was called the serious art. Before the classical cinema would direct the viewer's gaze by the means of the editing, we could observe a disruptive creative chaos in the film program, similar to what was found among the popular theater and in this year reviews, cinematographic reviews. In the Brazilian context, the musical comedy genres brought from Europe soon gained a national aspect, and the cinematograph, this foreign medium, became the vehicle that would excellently circulate our theatrical year review. A typical Brazilian genre whose types, themes, and songs so fully delineated the temperament of a country that, despite its undeniable European heritage, was seeking to build up its own identity. Thank you very much.